by 12, I realized, and I'm very fortunate about that my purpose in life was creating a more fair society where people could develop. Now I express it in those words, but help society become like a place where anybody, regardless of where they were born, could develop their full potential.
Hi, I'm Jared Hope, co-founder of Logos, a fully decentralized technology stack that's privacy preserving and politically neutral. Today we're talking to Diego Gutierrez Zaldivar. I'm bastardizing that, please correct me.
But no, you did perfect. This is a tough last name.
Yeah, I need to work on that. But you're the co-founder of IOV Labs, Rootstock Labs, Bitcoin Argentina, and many, many more initiatives with an amazing background and history of how you got into this space. So yeah, thanks for joining me, and pleasure to chat with you.
My pleasure to be here.
Cool. So I'd love to hear like how you got into crypto. Like, where did this all start for you, and how to lead to the initiatives that you're doing today?
Well, I think if you trace back to the true origin, is like there's two things that were always present in my life. One was the desire to transform society in a place where everybody could develop their true potential, their full potential. And the other thing was technology. It's like I started doing social work with my mother at 9, going to the slums in Buenos Aires, and I started programming at 11. And also because I was in touch with technology like very early, also in the development cycle, in the development process of technologies. Like when I started, we had the first home computers. So I saw the full evolution from home computers to PCs to networking, BBS, and then into the internet. I was one of the pioneers of the .com. I was the first webmaster for the main newspaper in Argentina in 1996. So in a way, I live one cycle of innovation around the web and the .com in full, because I started in 1996. I even was part of one IPO in NASDAQ in 2000, and then I saw the collapse, and then the rebirth of the web, almost 10 years after, when social networks started to emerge, also mobile devices, and right at that new blossoming of the web is when I got in touch with Bitcoin. First in 2011, and then I didn't realize its true potential right there. But then in 2012, a very good friend of mine, Wences Casares, brought me back into it. It's like he shared, and in a way, I was always after the web days where we had a lot of. When I started, I had a lot of hope put into the web. I thought the web was going to transform society to be a better place, a more egalitarian, or improve opportunities, and I think it did, but not in the full dimension of the human development. No, and later when I got in touch with Bitcoin, I had this experience with Wences around Bitcoin. I realized that what we were missing. Now I have words to put it, but in the web days, it's like in the web we were transforming communication, information. But we were not touching how value was handled and managed in the society. So what we were missing was that dimension. No? And when I saw Bitcoin at the beginning, the experience, I shared that many times, but it was like Wences was in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley. I was in Buenos Aires. We had capital controls in Argentina, and it was impossible to get, well, not impossible, but very expensive. Like it was taking me like 1 month, and I was losing 10% of the value that I was collecting from my customers. I had a software factory back in the day, from Europe and the US, because the payment
When was
system.
this again? Sorry, what year was this around? Or decade?
2012.
Gotcha.
So, but I was doing it for a couple of years now. It was before Bitcoin. I was using a bunch of the hops between banks in Europe to PayPal to banks in the US. So it was a mess. It was very cumbersome, and then we had the capital controls in Argentina. And when we had this experience with Wences, he made me open an account in Blockchain Info. That was like a pioneer platform. It was a web wallet, and then he sent me 5,000 bitcoins, which at the time were like 50K. No, it's still very relevant. I mean, now it's much more, but at that time was still a relevant amount of money.
Sure.
And then I sent them back. He told me to keep one, and then when I checked my balance, I had 0.9995 instead of one, and then I said why, and then I realized I was paying for the transaction. So even the cost of the operation of the system was fully transparent, and the whole process didn't require authorization from anybody. It was, the two of us, like thousands of miles away, exchanging value. And then that was my aha moment where I said, yeah, this is how I call it the Internet of Value now, but this is how a truly free financial system, which embodies the same principles we were thinking for the web in terms of information and communication, should look like. And then, well, I was like 15 days nonstop, doing all sorts of, like, reading mostly about the financial aspects, because I come from a tech background. So I needed to read about the history of money, Bretton Woods, how the financial architecture of the world works, and understanding all those dimensions. And I kept studying for 3 years more, like every day taking a new concept from the financial system until I managed to understand the full picture. So yeah, that's how I started.
You're right. That's amazing. I mean, so I guess like, thank you for that. And like, obviously the journey has continued on from there, but rewinding back to like, these core desires of like transforming to society, like, and helping people reach their full potential. Like, where do you think that comes from? Did that come from your mother's work at all? Or like, is that something that you were born with, do you think? Or?
Yes, it comes from those experiences. I think, of course, my mother, like, if you want, like, expose me to the realities, but there are certain experiences I had that were like instrumental in who I am.
Can you talk about them at all? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I saw people like the person who was leading in the slums. You cannot get into the slums without somebody from the place that will help you and open the doors, because they usually, those are environments where people they don't trust by definition, because they have been abused multiple times by external people, foreigners, people who wants to take advantage of them. So usually they are very reserved, and they have if you want, a web of trust, among them, and that's how it works. Is somebody needs to open the leader in the slums. He was like an amazing person, as a human being, very smart. No education, but he was like creating his own building methods, like creating panels with cement and steel frames and things like that. He was creating from scratch, out of his own inventive and what I saw is like he could not prosper, because basically he didn't have the means to, but he was a person that had all the attributes you would expect from a human being, no, in terms of like ingenuity, solidarity. He was helping always the community. He was an amazing person, and I think from his perspective, he had a very fulfilled life. It's not that this was, I don't think he was a victim, but at the same time, I felt that as an injustice. It's like, I said, why we have a world where, people with that is extremely valuable cannot prosper just because they were born in the wrong place.
Wrong context, yeah.
Wrong context. So that was, and I was very young. I think I started going with my mother without much thinking on my own at 9. But by 12, I realized, and I'm very fortunate about that my purpose in life was creating a more fair society where people could develop. Now I express it in those words, but help society become like a place where anybody, regardless of where they were born, could develop their full potential. No. So
yeah, right.
the search I started in a way, no, and then I had technology on one side. I had the social aspects. I keep doing social work until my early 20s, and so I had that, and then I started like growing in the technological side. I was a node for a BBS that were the precursors of the internet. Then I became
I was on them myself. Yeah.
Yes, and you remember that it was like the first experience of like packaging emails, but during the night we were sending them to another node and that, or hop, and that then he was packaging, or she was packaging and following hop, and then you were having I was reading about blue boxing, hacking, and so I had conversations with people in Finland that they were like sending me messages back, and it was like a round trip was 2 days, but it was the first like that experience.
It was amazing. It was like one of the best experiences I had on the internet that I haven't been able to replicate in the same way, right?
Yeah, because it was the first time that we were connected globally. No, now we give that for granted, but coming from not being connected into being connected, and then is when my two paths, like in a way, came together, because then I saw that technology could be a tool for social transformation. So my focus on the web days was all around building communities. So I attempted, I didn't thought about Facebook, but I was thinking about, like, I created communities around, for example, agricultural industry, communities around health industry, like more industry-oriented communities, and using then on the education side, I created platforms to manage the relationship within the schools, universities, like as part of different startups I was part of, but always with this concept that what the web was bringing to us was the ability to connect and create communities on a global scale of people who had like shared interests, shared values. So that was what I was chasing back in the day,
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess there's a lot of things that are super interesting to unpack here. Obviously, I'd be very curious to hear how, this side of the social work has combined with the technology and the vision that you have, today and have been working on, and in the future. Like, what does that look like? And then why is, what's the vision? And then why is the technology the best way to do that vision, I guess? And then I'd love to talk about communities as well, and like how you think about them.
Let me try to gather my thoughts, but there's, if you want, at the end of the 90s, just before, like 1999, I decided to step out of the social organization I was part of, because I realized that power was a corrupting force. So any hierarchical structure eventually was going, depending on the size, was going to corrupt people. And sometimes it was not the corruption of like the more raw or coarse corruption that you can, like, say, okay, it's about money, about probably. Sometimes corruption is about like getting prestige. There's other ways where power corrupts. But then I said, I need to find a way to search for like creating more horizontal organizations. And then I started like a phase of experimentation. Even with the startups I created, I tried to create them more in a cooperative way. Started like, and I failed, but back in the back of my head, yes, because I think there's values, there's dynamics. I think, even the organizational dynamics we have in society have evolved. I think agility, the agile methodologies brought a lot of knowledge about how to organize the structures in a different way, in a more horizontal. We are learning about that, but there's a lot of cultural elements that go against the collaborative endeavors, and we are still very formatted for hierarchical models. No, so even if I was bringing people into the projects and taking the time to explain the view, my vision about how we could organize society in a more horizontal, people still was acting based on their cultural backgrounds and bias. So it was very tough. But then what happened is, like, when I got in touch with Bitcoin, as I didn't get into Bitcoin for the financial aspects, I got into Bitcoin because of the social aspects. What I realized is, or I had the intuition, I would say, that Bitcoin was that tool I was looking for to create power structures that were more fluid or liquid in a way. So because part of the problems of power structures is that they crystallize, and then people in power is always delegated. No, it's like when we receive power, it's somebody else delegating power in us because they feel we are worthy of handling that power, and we will do that for the mutual benefit. No, it's like for my benefit and the benefit of others. But as you get power and more power, what happens is, like, people start like thinking of their own interests instead of like thinking on the collective interest. So in a way, I saw Bitcoin as a way of like managing those power relationships in a liquid way, in a more dynamic way, and avoiding this power corruption.
Yeah, that's spot on, right? Like, I mean, that's how I conceptually hold it as well. Like, I don't think you can get rid of like hierarchies entirely. And in fact, there are use cases for them. Like, you get some efficiencies, certainly in organizations and coordination. And when you have to deal with, a division of labor, for example. But the issue is exactly as you said. When it crystallizes and it isn't fluid, then like the exit costs start becoming too high, and or the cost of moving out of the structure become too high, and so you need things like a revolution or something like that to break them. Whereas if you can make the actual system itself a bit more capable of transferring or diffusing that power in a relatively quick way, then you can start to ameliorate some of these issues that we have with corruption. That's how I view it anyway.
Absolutely, and then you have the element of transparency, which I think, we are like at the point in society where we need more transparency in the institutions, because what we have is like a lot of institutions. I mean, this power dynamic we were describing, like, is happening in politics. So you have, you have the betrayal, the constant or cyclic betrayal of, those in power, of the people who elected them or selected. But with transparency, you can improve in the organizations. You can, make it tougher, or at least leave a record of those betrayals, and then the cost of betraying would be much bigger. But at the same time, we are needing more privacy on the individual level, because it's like, when you talk about privacy, people, it's a little bit too abstract for people. But without privacy, there's no liberty, or there's no freedom. No, it's like, and in that sense, it's like the fight for freedom is about like protecting individual privacy in the digital world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in the social world, on the institutional level, we need to bring another level of transparency and accountability.
Yes.
And although those two things might look opposite or at odds, it's interesting that the technologies that Bitcoin brought to the world can achieve both. It's like they can, we now know, I call it the Internet of Value, that Bitcoin was the beginning of something bigger. That is this, I call it an Internet of Value because for me it's a network of networks, to handle value. And I say value and not money because for me it goes beyond money. It's like, it's like I'm transferring, my political will or value into somebody to handle it, and I'm transferring other things that are not necessarily monetary, but are valuable as well. So that's what we are building. We are building an internet to handle the value of the world, no? And as you say, that will enable. I always think of innovation as an enabler. Innovation doesn't make the change, but innovation enables new behaviors, new ways of structure society, and that's exactly what we are building. We are building tools to enable a new kind of society.
Absolutely.
But then we as human beings need to, need to drive these technologies in a constructive direction, no?
Absolutely. I'm totally on board with the whole cypherpunk mantra: privacy for the weak and transparency for the powerful. Absolutely. Our public institutions, or wherever capital is being deployed across an entire society, should be public, and the recipients of that capital should be also public. And I think you make a really good point there. Like, there's a technological aspect of it, but then there's also this cultural aspect, which I think has been kind of maybe more so outside of the, as crypto as a market has gotten larger, right? Like some of that cultural aspects of like what was very strong and certainly is strong in the Bitcoin ecosystem has kind of got somewhat diluted a little bit. And so I don't know how you think about that. And then I guess the other question is, how does Rootstock fit into all of this?
I think, the dilution is part of the process. It's like, the same happened in the web. The early pioneers of the web, we had this dream. We were like extremely excited about our impact in society and everything. As it got mainstream, it was not so much about ideology, it was more about utility, because at the end it's like, if innovations that don't provide utility to the society, they won't prosper, because in order to attract the capital, in order to attract the resources to grow, you need to provide utility in exchange. So it's like the utility provisions, like you can start with a dream and the utility is the driver of the growth. But in order for the dream to become true, you need to create this value for society. It's the same. It's like with the printer, like with the press when it started. It's like, okay, before that, the monks were like copying by hand, book by book, and then the knowledge was constrained to that institution that was doing that. Suddenly, everybody could but there was a profit. There were business built around the press as well. It was not only about the ideology of sharing, a new narratives or new ways of thinking or sharing knowledge. It was also a business around that. No, in a way, it's a Schumpeterian view of where you have like innovation cycles. Those innovation cycles, like you have a micro cycle, and within that you have sub cycles. And so I think we need to find that way, and part of finding that way to sustainability and growth of the ecosystem implies dilution of the original ideology or true spirit of what we are building. But that is true for any movement and anything
I think what comes to mind is Alan Kay from Zara Park Labs, right? He even laments that the computer revolution hasn't happened yet, right? Because like their ideology and how they foresee the full potential of computer literacy and computation hasn't happened.
No.
And this utility and business side of it is he would criticize Steve Jobs for turning applications into these stovepipes, right? All these appliances, rather than like liberating humans, in their own personal selves. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yes, and I think in that dynamic again, it's like you have the idea. Every revolution was an utopia first. No, so
Sure.
you need to have the utopia is the driver. The utopia is the north you are chasing, but it will never be, because at the end, what happens is a collective construction, because it's like everybody contributing their own thing. So it can never be your own utopia. It's like I always had a different utopia, more liberated. I keep working towards that utopia, but knowing that it's not going to be as I envision it. No, it's like sorry.
Yeah, that's a very mature response. I think I'm kind of grappling with that myself still, and I haven't come to terms with it fully yet. But I like the idea of holding both of those concepts in mind at the same time, right? You still work towards your utopia, do your best to envision it, as much as realize it as much as possible, while also realizing it's not yours and it requires the rest of humanity to adopt it however it comes out, which is
adopt
great.
it and transform it. No, it's like and maybe in a small scale we can have our utopias.
Sure. Yeah.
Realize. No, maybe I will have my like small community where I will have those values, like something closer to what I wanted. But still it will be influenced by the others in the community. Otherwise, they would be an extension of myself. No,
Right.
So in a way, I think it's that's the dynamic. It's like also there are other things like that are at play. That is like innovators disrupt. So there's a fight between innovators and the status quo. But in this utility game, they need to prove that they can provide value for society. As they prove value, and economies of a scale start happening, you will have a process of consolidation. So at the end, the new status quo will be built out of the innovators, no? And that's the dynamic. And then new innovations will enable new disruptors to come. But we need to accept that dynamic. It's like, in the beginning, everything was open in the web, no? And then, and Google's model was based on that openness, no? They were crawling and indexing all the available information. And then Facebook came and said, no, now I will create my wall garden. You will be able to pick at some of the information, but you need to log in, you need to register in order to see what's happening inside my garden. Yeah. So they broke the model that where the early web was built. And then, okay, we need to play that new game and it's like, that's how it works. And then, with Uber, Airbnb, what we had is people doing the same, but with reputational traces, like saying, okay, I will create my wall garden of reputational traces, and basically, control the reputation of others, because that's the core of the business model of Amazon, Mercado Libre, Airbnb, Uber. Is like everything is trust building, but in a closed system, no? And that's another thing that for me is key. Is like these technologies are bringing, because we are already working on self-sovereign identity and models that will bring open reputational systems. So all my reputation should be under my command, and if I go to one place, and build reputational traces in those interactions. Those interactions need to come with me, and I can port them to another environment, because those traces belong to me, were built by me, and of course by the counterparty. So, and if a platform is the enabler of those interactions, also, deserves to have, a copy of those traces. But what you cannot do is appropriate the traces of others and the reputational traces of others. And so I think that's another, disruption that is coming with this new technology. So we are disrupting so many things. It's like, creating peer-to-peer monetary systems, creating peer-to-peer financial services, creating peer-to-peer reputational systems. So I think it's well, you're talking about transforming how value is managed in the society. So that's the blood of humanity, no? The value.
And so like trust and reputation is how like included within that set of value, right? Like you're talking about when
Mm-hmm.
we, yeah. Okay, and so you mentioned, obviously we're doing peer-to-peer financial services, obviously currencies, and we talked a little bit about reputation. What other sort of tools do you think are like necessary or required to kind of bring about the sort of social change that you're looking for?
Well, then I will use this to connect with the with the original question, no, about how Rootstock started, and it's like, because actually that vision of what is needed to create a financial system that can serve anybody. I like to say, I don't want to create an inclusive. I don't want to create to do inclusion. What I want is to build a financial system that is inclusive by design. So, because the concept of including people into something that it's already rejecting them, it's a bad concept. It's like, what you need is to create a system that is inclusive by design, and you don't need to include anybody. Anybody can use it, and it's adapted to the context of everybody, and will work for everybody. No?
Yeah,
And
saying like trying to include people implies that there's someone or some entity or agent that is doing, or authority that is doing the including, which is not what you want, right?
and
Like
also that there is one right side and a wrong side in a way.
yeah,
It's like and I think it's about. I don't think there is evil in the world, but I don't think in general these human processes happen because of evilness. They happen mostly because of limitations of the technologies we have at our disposal, and of course of our mindsets as well. No, it's like I think we come from a world of scarcity, so our mindsets work for scarcity. In a scarcity, you need to work. In competition, you need to work in hierarchical structures, because when you don't have resources for everybody, you need to create a model to select who will receive the resources. No, but I think since the Industrial Revolution, and now with AI, robotics, and all the new advancements we have, we are no longer in a context of scarcity. We are in a context of abundance, but our mindsets are still structured for a scarcity model. No,
gotcha.
So in a way, going back of what you need to have a financial system that is inclusive by design.
Mm-hmm.
On one side, in very practical terms, you need a system where transacting is very cheap, and I think in the case of the blockchain technology, we have achieved that. In terms of the World Bank, the concept of cheap transactions is like 2 cents, 3 cents or less. And I validated that on the ground in Latin America, and it's valid. It's like, if you have 2-3 cents, people will transact even on the streets, and now we have achieved that through the off-chain networks. No, so if the rollups, the payment channels like Lightning, and so that's one thing. It's like, you need cheap transactions. That's one thing. You need also a system that doesn't charge you maintenance fees. You need a system, because people who live day by day, they don't have the foresight of knowing if they will have the funding to pay for the monthly fees of something. So it needs to be something you pay as you use. And that's the beauty of blockchain systems. No, it's like you only pay as you use it. So in a way, the infrastructure cost is socialized among all the people using the infrastructure. So those things have been sorted out. When I started, we had that challenge. We didn't have clarity on how those challenges, because we started with this work, doing some experiences and pilots on the slums of Buenos Aires in 2014, and that's where all these ideas emerged. No, so that's one thing. The other thing is, like, people who is living day by day or week by week cannot be exposed to counterparty risk, because if a third party, steals the funds or stop working or whatever, like that, people, it's in a life risk situation. It's not just. So for that, I started thinking how we create, a peer-to-peer monetary system. But back in the day, I wanted that system to work in the safest infrastructure that was and still is Bitcoin. So
Absolutely.
the following question was like how we build a peer-to-peer monetary system on top of Bitcoin. And so that's when I had in October, I had a conversation with Nick Szabo in October 2014, and we were discussing Ethereum was not functioning yet, but was announced in January 2014. We were thinking like, it's a pity that instead of like using the Bitcoin infrastructure and also the acceptance and capillarity of the asset, no, because it's like when you create a decentralized blockchain, you not only need to build the security infrastructure, but also because these are systems based on game theory and economics, it's like you need to build the economy around the native asset of the network, because the security goes hand in hand with the economic element of it. No, so we said, okay, instead of like, so my thinking was like, why start a new network, start a new asset, and have to go through all those processes that would take many, many years, instead of like leveraging on Bitcoin, no? Bitcoin is tough to build on top. Now, after being many years building on Bitcoin, I can tell you that it's like it's very tough.
I get it. Like, I mean, I was around at the time, and like, we were doing like Namecoin, Colorcoin, Counterparty, yes. Mastercoin, right? And we were all trying
all the early attempts.
Yeah. And generalized Bitcoin script, right? And so there was a whole bunch of different approaches. And that's, I agree with you. Like, I think, well, especially for the context that you're in, like in Latin America, like there's a huge sort of informal economy around Bitcoin, right? Because of these capital controls, as I understand it, and a bunch of failings within the financial institutions. So it makes perfect sense to build something like Rootstock and enable, more functionality out of that.
Yes, exactly.
At the time, I ended up going the Ethereum way, and like the early culture was really cool because there was a bunch of like Bitcoiners essentially, right? That's changed a lot since then, but yeah, I'm very curious. Like, why do you think that Bitcoin got adopted in, like, say, places like Argentina and Brazil, or like Latin America in general?
Well, in the early days, because it was only Bitcoin, no, there was no other. But why it got? I think it has multiple dimensions. I think Argentina, for example, it's a place where we suffer all the economic crisis you can imagine, from bail-ins, hyperinflation, you name it, we had it. It's like, and cyclically, like every 10 years, we have a big meltdown. So what happens in a society like that is like, everybody is hedging against government financial decisions. It's like, it's so crazy that, like, the taxi driver, like people that is non-financial and doesn't come from a financial background, they will be hedging all the time, like saying, okay, yeah, if I have something to save, I will put it in dollars. I'm not going to put in, or I will buy goods. Like, buying goods is a way of preserving value, no? Things that in other economies doesn't make sense, because you always think, okay, a car will depreciate, but maybe in Argentina, a car will be a better store of value than even having dollars, depending on the situation. So people is always hedging, and so the awareness of the macroeconomic in the regular population is so high that's crazy. It's like I don't think you have that anywhere else in the world.
No, I don't think so. No.
And the other thing is, like, people is very tech friendly. It's like Argentina was one of the first like movers in social networks. It's like we were pioneering. Indeed, Mercado Pago is the biggest marketplace in Latin America, comes from an Argentinian. It's like we have so many, technological developments and entrepreneurs, and so we are very tech friendly. And if you think about this, is the crossroads of both, no, economy and technology. So we had like a population and a group of entrepreneurs that were ready to manage and to absorb this new thing already there. And the other thing is that we started creating communities very early on. And I think that's key. It's like with Rodolfo Andrañez and Franco Amati, we started the first meetups in Buenos Aires, and then we helped create meetups in all Latin America around Bitcoin. In February 2013 were the first meetups. And then around that, we started building a community where we were discussing the potential of the technology. And if you look at all the main startups in Latin America, they come from those meetups. It's like, all the big startups in the space in Latin America, or most of them, come from those meetups. Then we created LaBitConf, the Latin American Bitcoin conference, at the end of 2013. And then we started like moving LaBitConf through Latin America to start helping, like, when we saw a community that was getting like big enough, we went there with LaBitConf to support it, to increase it, to grow it. So we took it to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, then to Mexico, then to I think we went back to Buenos Aires, then Colombia, then Chile, then Uruguay, then El Salvador when they adopted Bitcoin. So and that community around LaBitConf, around the meetups, is the community that has been building this phenomenon. So I think the community element was key as well, no? So bootstrapping an ecosystem, because you don't know exactly where the phenomenon will go. It's what we were talking at the beginning, no? It's like you need to build this collective intelligence and analyze and that sense of belonging and community is what allowed us to dream and build without the boundaries of what was expected. No, it's like
okay. I mean, thanks for that. I'm very curious. So, from a technology standpoint, it sounds like you validated or understood like some of the issues that people, need to have in the system. So, like very cheap transaction costs. There's no maintenance fees. You basically do like a prepaid or you pay as you go kind of system. You've got this in place now. You can do, complex.
And the other important thing was reputational, because that's the test you need to validate. But the other important thing was because people who is excluded, they don't have a car, they don't have a house, they don't have, a formal paycheck. So reputation, that's the thesis. No, we still need to prove that thesis, but the thesis is that over time they can build enough reputation that reputation will become their collateral. No,
absolutely. This is what I was about to ask as well, right? So like you have, my question, like broadly, is like, how do you see this moving forward, or how do you now take this technology that comes back to these people, and like what does that look like? Because when I start thinking about this, I think of like Grameen Bank or NGOs like BRAC, who started off with microcredit, for example, or microfinance after that. And so I guess like my question around that is like, do you think that's is that something that's worth building out and viable? And for, sorry, I messed up my thoughts here, but a lot of Grameen's hypothesis that use that social collateral or reputation for identifying who to give loans out to in the first place, as I understood it.
Absolutely. I think it's like, that's a model. If you go to the slums that exist like in a non-technological way, for example, they call it Ronda. So they have different names depending on where you go. But in the slums of Latin America, you can see that people do that. It's like they have trust groups. And within that trust group, everybody puts like an installment every week. And, randomly one of them is selected. And that's like an auto loan that the community creates for their own. So that's a way of social vouching. And what we can do is like add more technology to make that more efficient, more even more secure, because we have experimented with some models in the north of Argentina with a system called Aalda, where the idea is the community also the model we want to go is one where people will pay kind of an insurance fee, and then that goes to a pot of money that if somebody defaults on their loans, first the community fund will respond for the default, but that will increase the insurance. And if the community stays, healthy and they honor the loans, then the insurance will go down maybe to almost zero. No, so or you can keep increasing the insurance as a way of enabling bigger credits. No, so in a way, it's a self-regulated
very cool
loan system. So those things are things we can do with this technology. We are experimenting with it, and you're asking me what is missing or how I see this vision evolving. I think now we have all the elements. When I started, we didn't have the elements. Also, money was not digital. So one big challenge we had in these experiments we did in 2014 were we thought we were going to have to do the educational or forming people into what was digital money. We thought we had that challenge as well. Although the World Bank was estimating, I think it was the World Bank or one of those the big institutions, they were estimating that by 2020, half of the excluded population was going to have a smartphone in their hands, which actually happened. So in a way, that was another challenge we had. Connectivity in the slums, access to smartphones, because that was the thesis. It's if we can provide all the financial services in a smartphone, then people could actually be included and have tools, financial tools right at their hands. So we were preparing for that. That was also the reason why we went for Bitcoin, because our expectation, although Ethereum did amazingly well, it's they for me, I didn't expect Ethereum to go so fast. I expected them to, because of this setting a new infrastructure, acceptance of the currency and everything. But I'm happy that they did. I think we are all pushing in the same direction. That is creating.
That's how I view it. Yeah,
a better world. No, so I'm happy. But what I wanted is to capture that moment. No, then the pandemic came, so that in a way also was a big shift for the whole society. In some sense, for the good, in terms of digitalization became even stronger. But in a way, my fear is that we are doing digitalization of money in centralized hands. So that can become a controlling system for society and not, liberating or so. So that's, I think, is the fight we need to give in this decade is how we make sure that the digitalization of money is not at the cost of freedom. And we do that. And I think crypto and, decentralized blockchains are the only way you can ensure that we'll digitalize money and value in a way that will protect people's freedom. No?
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's great that, all of these people who are currently excluded did actually get a smartphone. I guess that also raises a question how does this work? Because there's obviously in a subsistence economy, in an informal economy such as a slum, also energy and data, right, are at a premium, and that could be paying for your data versus paying for the meal to eat for today is a real issue, right?
Absolutely.
How do you view that, or what's is it feasible?
And there's another problem that they don't have. For example, if you think, even if you had the money and you were willing to pay for the storage service, you don't have a credit card. You are not bank. You are unbanked. So these people cannot even hire a cloud system. No, so there's an impossibility. That's why, in the process of building Rootstock, in 2017, I started with the idea of when I say it's the collective, no, because it's me and the other partners with whom we build Rootstock, Sergio Lerner, Adrian Eidelman, Gabriel Kurman, Ruben Alman, all of us, collectively. I was the one driven by this social transformation, but all of them ended up embracing that. And then, Sergio always says, Sergio is one of the most brilliant minds in the crypto space. It's like he's not as well known as Vitalik, but when you look at his trajectory and the things, it's like, for example, Tangles, the basis of Avalanche, the Tangle that was created by Sergio at the end of 2015. So he has created so many things. He found 9 critical bugs in Bitcoin, and instead of exposing them, he went to the core team and helped them sort them out. So he have actually saved Bitcoin from collapse many times. He's an amazing person, and he's the technical mind behind Rootstock. But he always said that he loves that now. He always was in love with technology, but he loves that now he's contributing to the social transformation as well. No,
right.
So.
I guess, does that mean like we're going to be running nodes inside like internet cafes or mobile phone shops then? Or like, how do you view that?
I think it's like, well, the full vision to synthesize it is like Bitcoin as the infrastructure foundation, Bitcoin as the store of value asset. On top of that, the peer-to-peer monetary system backed by Bitcoin, going back to Fort Knox, but using smart contracts to custody the funding that exists today. Money on chain is for me, is the best stable asset protocol in the world, and it's fully automated. And then on top of that, the financial primitives, we also have that. You have Sovereign, you have Tropicus, you have different. Now you have DEXs. All the Oku that it's, so you have many DEXs. Then on top of that, you need, and that's like the missing part, like these reputational profiles and scoring systems. That's where we are now in my original vision of like, that's the missing piece. And in order to do that, you need to deploy at scale public-private cryptography, because that's the foundations of that. So that's where the work we are doing with the IOV Foundation, that is different from IOV Labs. It's a foundation in Switzerland. That's where, with the foundation, we are working with governments in Latin America and with social and environmental impact organizations to start like building tools for them to create trust, what we were describing. So we are bringing now trust frameworks, digital trust frameworks, they can use to improve their transparency. Therefore, we think that will create, more trust in the institutions. Therefore, more funds will flow into those institutions that are doing the good work, both in the social and environmental and in government. So we are working on that because those organizations, governments and social impact and environmental impact organizations, are the ones who have the reach to the people on the ground. So if they embrace this infrastructure, this digital trust infrastructure, they will deploy it into the population. And once people have those tools, then they can use it freely, because this is all open networks with certain principles where you can choose where to store your data and everything. But going back to your question on deciding to put the money in food, or I think how it will work is not going to be, you will have service providers at the end. The main question, the main difference is like you will have facilitators, because I don't expect people at the beginning, maybe in the future they can do it, to have their own data storage for themselves. But, what I expect is like service providers to operate in a non-custodial way. So still the person will be in command of their resources, and the service provider will be a facilitator and will only interact with the funds of the user when the user decides to do so. So in a way, you are reducing, you're not removing altogether the intermediation, but you are removing the power that intermediators have and creating this sort of liquid flow where you say, okay, if this provider is not honoring the agreement, I can move to another provider that will provide me more or less the same services but I take my keys somewhere else, and I keep operating somewhere else. So in a way, that's the vision we are chasing. Is like how we create infrastructure. So we have fintechs, the 2.0 fintechs. That's where Reef comes. Is like all the infrastructure services needed to build a fintech that operates in a decentralized environment. So it's not operating, with traditional, databases and 7 firewalls and insurance, but it's operating on decentralized infrastructure and earning commissions on the transactions and interactions the users willingly want to delegate on this service provider. No?
Yeah, right. Cool. I mean, I find that quite interesting because, like, how you're thinking about doing this. Because, like, on one hand, you've done a lot of community building. You've kind of done it from like the grassroots, let's say,
Yes.
right? And then on the other hand, it's kind of like a two-pronged, not attack, but implementation. You're then going to be working with, say, governments and NGOs to help facilitate, deploy this into the real world. What is it about the governments or NGOs and like the power they have that couldn't be done from just grassroots organizing?
I think it's a matter of reach and scale, and also of trust.
Okay.
Because if you think about the, institutions are the the repositories of trust in a way. It's like, individuals, we can accumulate a certain amount of trust, but institutions accumulate trust also in longer time frames. So, you have institutions that might have 100, 200 years. So in a way, institutions, and that may have its ebbs and flows. No, it's like it's not always up, but institutions have a way of building trust. So that also transfer trust to new technologies. Like if a citizen, regardless if it's included or excluded from the financial system, receives the tool from the government, that will transfer trust into that tool. So that will accelerate the trust building, because everything at the end, I always say everything is a circuit of trust. No, it's like first there is if you want a promise of something that will improve people's life, but then they need to do a leap of faith, embrace the technology, use it, and then the technology needs to fulfill that leap of faith, providing value to the person, and that enables like a retrofitting, like a bigger leap of faith. But in new things, you need to, bootstrapping that trust cycle is very tough. So in a way, by working with NGOs, working with governments, you are transferring trust.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I find that quite interesting. Like, I totally get that and see it. But I find that also kind of interesting because, as we discussed a little bit earlier, there's people who are hedging into Bitcoin because the trust has been eroded in some ways in these institutions. And that's actually what's, helping drive the adoption of these technologies. Yeah, fascinating. Cool.
So, I think maybe in a little bit chaotic way, we went through everything, no? But I think we...
Absolutely. I guess there's not much else from my side, unless there's anything in particular you want to bring up or talk about.
No, I think it's, it's very exciting because after 12 years in the space, that thing that was an intuition, now it's, we have all the elements there. We need to connect the dots. No, it's like we still have everything like separated, and we still need to bring that in applications like consumer apps that have like a user experience that is akin of a mainstream service, and that will speak the language of regular people. Still, I think the tools are available for the people with more knowledge about technology or finance, and I think that's the challenge we have today. But we have sorted out the scaling challenges. I think what we have is good enough to be able to be serving a couple billion people in the world. We have overcome the functionality problems. We are working on the interoperability, still early days, but more and more things like what Sergio is working now with BitBMX will help interoperability not only in Bitcoin, but also between other chains. I think that's a big breakthrough. So we are very, very close to have something that is sturdy and that will survive the pass of time and will become like the infrastructure of the future, the financial and value infrastructure of the future for society. So it's very exciting. It's like 12 years might look a lot for people or individuals, but it's not that much for society if you think about it, no?
Yeah, I mean, and we were kind of born at the right time, right? Like we've seen, had an analog existence and seen the whole rise and fall and rise again of all of this. It's a very exciting time to be alive. And I'm very bullish on like Rootstock and what you're doing there. And I'm very excited to see this roll out and into the real world. So, I mean, thank you for making that happen.
No, my pleasure. And as always said, it's a collective effort. No, it's like I would say my role is as an enabler of enabling amazing people to manifest their true potential. It's like that happened in the Bitcoin community, that happened in Rootstock. It's like I just created the context for amazing people like Sergio or Rodolfo and Franco to manifest and develop their full potential. So yeah, that's my role. So it's a collective effort and success, no? And so I'm very happy for that.
Definitely. Cool. And I guess like before we go, I'd be very curious if there's any like books or reading that's influenced you that you would like to share or think anyone should read, or is there any other resources that people should go check out?
Good question. I think there are some like I see society as a rhizome. I inspire on the Deleuze and Guattari philosophy and concepts. What that's the name Rootstock comes from that, because Rootstock means rhizome, and is this concept of plants creating a mesh, a network. So and the interesting thing is like the Rootstock is it has multiplicity and multidimensional in the sense that relationships in the human mesh or fabric are not linear or not hierarchical. No, it's like that's in opposition to the hierarchical view on society. If you think about it, it's like we have this interconnection that go in multiple levels, from the human economic level, even connections that go that are intertemporal. No, it's the connections of our ancestors between them. So that mesh is what, in terms of Jung says, the rootstock or the rhizome is the underlying fabric of society, and what you see in civilizations, it's just the flourishing of or the emerging of that rootstock. But the rootstock is the transient, nature of society, and then what we see is just some blossomings now and there, here and there, emerging from that rootstock. So I think that from a philosophical perspective, that's something. And also, if you want to go back in the day, go to the digital divide of Negroponte. All the work of the MIT was part of my inspiration. Many things. I think I'm very eclectic.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I think you have to be really to really appreciate this sort of stuff. Cool. Well, I mean, thank you so much. Wishing you best of luck in the journey forward, and very excited to see what comes out of your mission and your path. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. A great pleasure to be here.